Hello and welcome to the Make Money with Mace podcast. I'm your host Mace, and today we're going to be previewing the entire Week 2 NFL slate, aside from Thursday Night Football, which, if you read the blog today, I'm taking the Eagles to cover that 6.5-point spread. And like I said, just going to keep plugging through this NFL season, providing that 4-bet, best bet format every Sunday. Going to take a bet on the Thursday game and probably a prop or just a spread, whatever the case may be, on the Monday night games. So I want to get right into it. Starting off on Sunday, I'm just looking at a schedule. I'm just going to go right down the line. Going to highlight some games I think might be more interesting than others, but overall, just going to take a look at the landscape and see what it offers. So starting off, the first game I'm looking at are the Los Angeles Chargers going to the Tennessee Titans, and the Chargers are 3-point favorites. And if you know about how I bet with the Titans based on last week, you'll know that I love Vrabel as a 3+ point dog, and I love him this game for a multitude of reasons. The first being the Chargers defense leaves much to be desired. I don't know why Joey Bosa just doesn't look like an impact player. I understand why Khalil Mack's not. The dude's got tons of tread on those tires. Joey Bosa just doesn't have the same tread, and he's just not really an impact player and was erased by a pretty average to below average Miami offensive line. So in those cases, I think that Tennessee is going to have a much easier time running the football, and then Ryan Tannehill will get to throw off of play action, and overall they'll just look a lot better. J.C. Jackson was propped up by a superior New England defense that really played him in man-to-man. It doesn't seem like the Chargers are interested in making the most out of his skill set. So that's another reason why I really like Tennessee's offense in this game. And just in general, Tennessee plays a really hard-nosed brand of defense. And while I do think the Chargers will be able to score, I don't think they'll be able to score enough against a Derrick Henry-led run game, especially since Tennessee will be able to move the ball a lot more efficiently than they did against New Orleans. It's the home opener. There's a lot of juice, and the Chargers seem to just be missing something. Also, a huge coaching mismatch, too. So, quick little 2 minutes on that game. I have my eyes circled on it for a... I'm circling it and have my eyes on it for a potential best bet, especially for an underdog like Tennessee is. The next game I'm really interested in is Green Bay Atlanta, and it's a game where you're going to learn a lot about these teams because both teams on opposite sides of the ball, let's just go first with Green Bay. Green Bay got to face a team that was looking like a college team in terms of scheme on offense and miscommunications. They just didn't look like they played together all that much, and I don't think that's the best way to evaluate a defense, which did look really good. They still got to make the plays, which they did. But overall, I think it's hard to evaluate how good Green Bay's defense actually is when they didn't really have the opportunity to face a NFL caliber outfit. In Atlanta's case, their defense also didn't really face the stringiest test, but I do think that their test was harder just because, again, it wasn't whatever the Bears rolled out there. That was just not really good at all. It wasn't professional. The Panthers just had issues with the fact that they have a rookie quarterback and he was making rookie mistakes. But what I do think is very real is the Atlanta Falcons offense and how they can just run the ball on anybody. That Panthers front is nasty. They've got some real dudes up there. And I think that will keep the game close. I think Green Bay being a 1-point favorite makes sense. I'm taking a look at the under in this game just because I think there's going to be tons of running the ball from both teams because both teams are good at running the football. And just take a look at money line. Packers are slight favorites on the money line at even, while the Falcons are -125 or -120. And I think that's correct. I think the Falcons are a slightly better football team and have just an awesome offensive line. Ritter is still a question mark, but I think between the offensive line, Bijan and Tyler Algier, just being able to run it down anybody's throat, and the fact that you can count on Kyle Pitts or Drake London to make a play. So I think that the offense is in a really good spot, and I think their defense is pretty legit from the inside, anyways. Between Grady Jarrett, David Onyemata, tough name, sorry, and Calais Campbell. Their edge rushing isn't great, but Lorenzo Carter was making decent plays on the edge. And the secondary is pretty solid between having Jesse Bates out there and AJ Terrell. It's a solid unit on defense. It's probably like an average unit, like to above average unit at their absolute peak. But I think between their unit being really solid, I think that they'll be able to run the ball all over Green Bay, because while Green Bay does have good players on defense, I think that they're a little soft and more finesse, and they have a lot of speed, and they're able to play against speed very well, while the Falcons are a total throwback and just want to run the ball down your throat. So that's what I'm thinking for that game. I think under is on the table, and if I were to pick between the two, I really like Falcons. Home dogs, all that stuff sort of matters. And the next game is is Colts heading to Houston. Something about the Colts I do want to mention too is that the game looked a lot closer than it actually was if you just look purely on the offensive side of the ball. The Colts ended up getting a defensive touchdown in that game, so you're really looking at an offense that only scored 14 points with a rookie quarterback who was making lots of rookie mistakes. He won't throw the ball to the left side of the field, which is a big deal, I think. And D'Amico Ryans will be able to scheme something up. I think the Texans' defense will look better. I think C.J. Stroud will look better. This game is kind of a stay away, in my opinion, just because it's two rookie quarterbacks. There's not a lot of proven talent on that side of the ball. It's like Anthony Richardson and Michael Pittman, Damian Pierce and Laramie Tunsil on the other side of the ball for Houston. The defenses are okay. I think the Texans might actually have a slightly better defense than the Colts, even with DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart in the middle. I think that like Will Anderson's really, really solid. I think that D'Amico Ryans will be able to scheme better than whatever Indy's got going on. So that's what I think on that game. I think it's kind of a stay away. I think if you're interested in C.J. Stroud and Anthony Richardson, I think you could take a player prop on their over for rushing, especially Anthony Richardson. So yeah, that's what I think about that one. Next game I'm taking a look at is the Seattle Seahawks going to the Detroit Lions, and for as bad as Seattle looked in week 1, it is still week 1, and I think overreacting to it is a mistake. And that's why I think that Seattle will play a lot better, and I'm not writing them off. Detroit gets to open as a home favorite by a touchdown, 6 points. That's crazy. That is a lot of spread to cover. I see it as 6 at some places, but it looks like 5 in others, 4.5. But it's basically a 4.5 to 6 as a home favorite. What I'm really interested in this game is the over and under. It's at 47 or 47.5 at most books. And man, that's juicy. I think that Detroit will be able to put up more points against a weaker Seattle. Actually, I didn't want to mention this. I'm thinking about the Seattle from last year. Both their starting tackles are hurt, with Charles Cross and John Abraham. Not John Abraham. Abraham Lucas is the other tackle. John Abraham was a pass rusher for the Falcons in the mid-2000s. Sorry about that mix-up. But I think that Seattle missing their starting tackles is a massive deal, considering Aiden Hutchinson looked phenomenal against the Chiefs, who had their starting tackles. And they were getting to line up way further back off the line of scrimmage than they should have been able to. And Hutchinson still had a massive impact despite having no sacks. I think he had 6 or 7 pressures on Patrick Mahomes. And I think that will be a problem for Seattle. And I think Detroit, as a favorite, even if it is 4.5 points, will be able to sort of impose their will. And I think a big issue is that Seattle's front just isn't very good still. Even with the improvements they've made to it, it's very much a secondary favored defense, and they don't want you to be able to throw the ball against them. But Detroit wants nothing more than to run the ball like 50 times for 250 yards, and they'll take it if you give it to them. So that's why I think Detroit probably covers this game, just because I don't know how well Geno will be able to perform with both tackles being out the way they are, especially going up against a pretty stout Lions team. They're not the same terrible defense that we saw, and a part of that was Patrick Mahomes receivers dropping the ball like crazy, but even still, they were in positions to make plays. They had the pass rush going. It wasn't like Detroit just lucked their way into a win, but they were forcing tight window throws that needed guys to go make plays on, and they just didn't. So that's why I think Detroit will be able to cover against Seattle, and I'm really interested in this as one of my best bets, probably my favorite. And then heading into the next game, it's Chicago at Tampa. That's a depressing game. I have no idea what Chicago is going to be, to the point where it might just be a pure stay away. But bare minimum, Tampa has a bunch of veterans on both sides of the ball that want to go perform well. And I think by that alone, Tampa is a good pick. They're only 2.5-point favorites. And again, there's overreactions to week one, and it's just week one and those types of things. But Chicago's issues, go watch JT O'Sullivan on YouTube, by the way. He hosts the QB School channel. Go watch it, and there's an hour-long video breaking down the Bears' offense, all their dropbacks, right? Or just plays involving Justin Fields, or should have involved Justin Fields, that sort of thing. And he was disgusted by how the Bears were running their offense. And I don't think that's something you can just correct in a week. I think that's something that needs a bye week and a fundamental, like, what are we doing here? And I don't, even if it is just week one, they might be able to clean it up. The other teams that you can say it's just week one, they'll be able to clean it up for, are like the Seahawks or the Bengals or these other teams that have sort of proven their ability to clean it up a little bit. Like Tennessee, like, it's not like they didn't know what they were doing. They had really bad turnovers, and that's stuff you can clean up. What was going on with the Bears was like guys running the wrong routes, goofy play calls, like tight end sneaks, which everybody knows is a sneak, and stuff like that, where I just don't know what the Bears are doing, and I almost want to stay away from it, even with Tampa as a good like it's a weird game. Tampa could just beat them, because they've got a bunch of vets. Baker wants to prove himself. He's got a chip on his shoulder. Mike Evans is awesome. Chris Godwin's awesome. The offensive line's a little shaky, but that won't be an issue against the Bears because their defense is still a little toothless. The defense has good players on it for the Bucs. You know, everything is screaming Bucs should win this game by a decent margin and not just 2.5. I think the public just isn't in on Tampa yet, just because Baker's there. It's not Tom anymore, and obviously, that's why the public won't be there. But man, I really, I might stay away, because you just have no idea what Chicago is, and there's no way to know what Chicago is this early in the season. And if they have another performance like they had against Green Bay, you might just be able to write them off, and potential number one pick type of season for them. So yeah, that's that game. Then we got Las Vegas at Buffalo. Buffalo Bills home opener. The good news for the Buffalo Bills is that Vegas is not as good defensively as the Jets, and it's a West Coast team traveling east at a 1 o'clock start. That is a 1 o'clock East Coast time start, I should say, for any listeners not on the East Coast. But anyways, Buffalo is on paper so much better than Vegas. In Vegas, it's got all the tropes, like West Coast team traveling east, talent mismatch, offense and defensive talent mismatch, and 8.5 is a lot. It really is. But I do think Buffalo might just kill the Raiders in response to a terrible Monday night game, because we've seen Buffalo do that to teams that aren't as good as them. The one thing to be concerned about is Max Crosby could just ruin the game on his own. He does that quite a bit if I were a Buffalo Bills fan. But on the whole, I do think Buffalo is much better. I don't know if it'll be a best bet, just because 8.5 is a ton of points to be needing to cover. So that's sort of where I'm at on that. I mean, over under 46.5, 47 is kind of good, just because Vegas should be able to put up points. They've got a good offensive line. They've got good skill players. But I just don't trust Jimmy G all that much. And who knows? I think that this is sort of like a stay away, but if you were to take anything, Buffalo, 8.5, rock with that. Next game are the Kansas City Chiefs heading to Jacksonville, and Jacksonville needs to win this game to sort of prove to the NFL that they're there, that they are a big time, going to be around, going to be a problem. And if you're not going to beat the Chiefs without Travis Kelce and a not in game shape Chris Jones, when are you going to beat the Chiefs? Sort of type of thing. It is a team. It's not a West Coast team. They're in the AFC West, but they're a Central team traveling. They're going to be as bad as they were on Thursday. They have the extra rest. They've got Andy Reid with extra time. I think that Kansas City probably takes this game, but should be close. Jacksonville's offense will be able to do stuff, but I do think that their offensive line is a bit of a weak spot. And with their offensive line being a weak spot, I think, again, even if Chris Jones is not in game shape and he just comes right in and takes snaps, I think that he'll be able to wreck some plays. I think George Karlaftis might have a big day. And just as a matter of, can Trevor overcome that, which he probably can. The Chiefs secondary isn't all that great. They overperform based on Steve Spagnuolo being a great defensive coordinator. But it's just a matter of, can Doug Peterson out-scheme Steve Spagnuolo? And can the defense, can Jacksonville Josh Allen make enough plays to disrupt Mahomes and force an errant throw or two? So that's really what that game is. I think it'll be the best game in the 1 o'clock slate. I think it'll be really fun. And I don't know if I'll place a bet on it on Sunday. But I think it'll be a really good, fun game to watch. We got the Baltimore Ravens traveling to Cincinnati. Cincinnati are 3-point favorites. And here's a good stat. For as bad as Joe Burrow has been against the Browns, he's been excellent against the Baltimore Ravens. Let me pull this up real quick. If you can hear the mechanical keyboard, that's what I'm typing in. But from my memory, if my memory serves me correct, Baltimore has had severe issues trying to stop Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and just the vertical passing attack that the Bengals can have. So I think that will hold true. I think all the injuries that Baltimore's already... Okay, so I found Joe Burrow is 3-2 against the Ravens in his career. Starting off in 2020, he only played one game. Rookie year, he gets hurt, COVID. It's hard to take too much from that. Then in 2021 is when he lit them up, particularly the second game he played against them, which 37 of 46 with 525 yards and 4 touchdowns, no picks. And the game before that, it was 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. So he's 23-38 for 416 yards. So the yards per attempt were great. It just wasn't a particularly good day in terms of accuracy. Then in 2022, they lose a close one, if I'm remembering correctly. And he was 24 of 35 with a touchdown, a pick, 217 yards. So not his best day. And then the playoff game that they played, 25 for... Oh, no, that's not a playoff game. That's a regular season game. 25 of 42 with 215 yards, passing, touchdown, no pick. So Burrow has played against them well, but not like crazy well. But I do think that the same issues apply, and I think that that's a big deal. That's something you got to account for if you are a Bengals bettor. I think Joe Burrow also is great against the spread in his career, and that's something to keep in mind as well, as long as it's not the Browns. That's something where it's just like, man, Myles Garrett just owns them. And there's worse players to be owned by than Myles Garrett. Yeah, so here's the thing. Joe Burrow... Joe Burrow's covered the spread in 66% of his career starts. So if you're into that thing, go for it. Really, really, really go for it. I think this might be one of my favorites, just because there is a big mismatch between the Cincinnati skill players on offense against Baltimore skill players on defense, like the secondary. So I think that's a big thing to keep an eye on. And I think that Cincy will end up winning this game. I think they cover handedly. It's only 3.5. While Baltimore's offense will be better, it is concerning how everyone is still getting injured. And it's very concerning that they were only able to put up 25 points against Houston. Granted, they weren't really pressing as much as they needed to. They had control of that game. But you would like to see a little bit more, I think. No J.K. Dobbins is going to hurt. No Ronnie Stanley potentially is really going to hurt. And even if he's playing a little gimpy, that's not great. So that's how I'm feeling regarding that game. I think it'll be pretty good. And as I'm saying that, Devontae Smith, Eagles got the ball on the 10. Yeah. Tonight's bet's looking good already. Opening drive. Slim Reaper. He's a monster. All right. Next game. New York Giants at Arizona Cardinals. The Giants got to win this game. They have to win this game. They were as bad as they looked. As bad as they looked on Sunday night, they have to win this game. They can be better. They aren't facing a team that feels like it was specially made to defeat them in the way that the Cowboys have been. So I think that the Giants just win this game, set it and forget it. They're 4-point favorites. That feels pretty good. So set and forget it. 4-point favorites. Don't watch this game unless you're a degenerate or have somebody in fantasy or whatever the case may be. Next game is San Francisco at the Rams. That one is interesting just because Kyle Shanahan has such a good record against Sean McVay as a head coach. I think McVay's only got like 2 or 3 wins career-wise against Kyle Shanahan. And in terms of pure talent, the team is better. The San Francisco team is much better than the Rams. I think that the Rams are looking to prove that they still are a competent, solid football team. And I think last week was the start of that, where you just sort of forget that Aaron Donald is the best player in the league, but he missed half the season last year. Matthew Stafford can be an incredible quarterback, and guys like Puka Nacua, who would have been a mid-round draft pick if he didn't have a bad injury history. Puka Nacua in a McVay system is going to do very well. That's just the MO of McVay. Like the number one receiver starts looking really, really, really good. And I think that's a big deal for the Rams. I think they're going to be better than their over-under mark, which I think was 6.5. I think they're going to be like the second place team, potentially second or third place team. But I do think San Fran does have them today, even with 7.5-point favorites. I think the reliance on undrafted free agents is going to really show against San Fran, especially offensively. But I do think that the Rams can keep this close defensively because the 49ers offensive line isn't great, and Aaron Donald is Aaron Donald, so that's something to keep your eyes on. I'm probably going to stay away from it just because I'm not a huge fan of that matchup. I will say a matchup I am a huge fan of, which is the next one. I think it's America's Game of the Week. The New York Jets at the Dallas Cowboys. Man, the Giants have a better offensive line than the New York Football Jets. And while I think the line is 9, which is crazy, I do sort of love the under at 38.5 because I think both defenses are really going to ball out. But I think that Zach Wilson is significantly worse than anything the Cowboys are going to be rolling out. So I do think the defense is going to ball. I think they've got pride. The Jets, I think they're going to be trying to really win the game just because, again, why wouldn't you be? You're professionals. You're trying to really win every game you play. But I think the biggest difference between Dallas and the Jets just right now, where both defenses are clearly the best aspect of the team, Dak is such a better quarterback than Zach Wilson, and Dallas has a much better offensive line. Their offensive unit is so good. In comparison to the Jets, just because of that offensive line disparity. And I think that's what will be the difference in the game. And I think that 38.5 is a ton. I don't think it's going to be like I don't think 40-0's in the cards just because Dallas's offense, Dak is very hit or miss, but man, it is I actually saw the real over-under game. It's right below. Dallas might be able to cover, but they tend to beat the crap out of teams. They don't really take their foot off the gas. So that's why that 38.5 number is a little scary because they did just beat a team 40-0. So that's something to keep an eye on. The next game, which I'm definitely taking the under on, is Washington and Denver, both these defenses are solid-ish. Denver only had 3 pressures total, which is not good. But Washington's got a pretty stout defense. Denver should have a stout defense. There's good secondary. But I think 39 is a lot of points for Sam Howell and old man Russell Wilson at this point. So I think this game's going to be an under. I don't think it's particularly interesting other than for betting purposes at 39 or 39.5. So stick with that. I think under is going to happen. The offenses were very uninspiring. It's not like the Raiders have a particularly amazing defense, but the Broncos only had 6 drives in the game, which is another issue. The defense wasn't getting off the field, and I think that Washington potentially. It's in Denver. I do think the under is going to hit still, but man, I do think that Denver needs a win desperately, but I just don't know if they're going to get it. Next game, Miami and New England. Bias aside, I do think New England needs to win this home game. I do think that with the offense being a professional unit as opposed to a Bears type unit that we saw from week 1, it's going to make a massive difference between this series. I know Tua has never lost to Bill Belichick yet, but I do think for as good as the defense looked, as good as Miami's offense looked, I think part of that was the general incompetency of the Chargers defense. So they were making lots of mistakes. J.C. Jackson had really bad penalties, and it's stuff that you wonder whether or not, like, were they prepared for these wrinkles? Were they prepared for, handling? Like, obviously you can't really handle Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. You just have to limit their damage. But I do think that it's a bit of a concern for Miami that they did not stop the run whatsoever, and they allowed a good amount of passing yards to, again, they're a good offense, the Chargers. They have good players, they have good everything, but I just don't know how well Miami can perform against a New England defense that will probably do better than anything the Chargers had to throw at them, just because, again, the defensive talent in New England is crazy and the way that it's deployed is crazy. I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. I think 46.5 is probably right. I do think it's going to be in the mid-20s for both teams, just because Miami's defense is not particularly great, and I think that New England's going to be able to move the ball. So yeah, that's the case with that game. It's tough to say because I do love the Patriots and I want them to win. I think they can win. Now, will they win? Who's to say? So then we got a 2 Monday night games. New Orleans Saints going to Carolina. Carolina home opener. Should be pretty fun. I think it'll be a fun game. I don't think it'll be anything crazy. I think it'll be a good, clean, low-scoring game. That over-under's at 40. Take a look at it Monday night on that one. But I think that Bryce has a chance to look good in front of the home crowd. I don't like New Orleans very much still. I think that it's another slugfest, low-scoring game. Not going to see a ton of action. And then Cleveland at Pittsburgh, man. Cleveland, I have no idea what to think because it was like a driving rain game that Cleveland played in. And Pittsburgh's got the back-to-back home games. Cam Hayward's out, which is going to matter a ton. I do think that there's a chance the game is kept close just because it's kept close, because that's sort of what Mike Tomlin can do. And yeah, I think those Monday games are going to be interesting. I'll talk more about them when I do a recap pod or something along those lines. But heading into week 2, I think I'm trying to pick right now. I'm still marinating on what to bet. But in terms of games I'm interested in, I'm betting on are, I think Tennessee covering against the Chargers is very much on the table. Just because it's a mismatch. It's like very much a team that wants to punch you in the mouth against a team that doesn't like to be punched. I think Green Bay Atlanta is the most fun game of the week. I think it's the most what's going to happen sort of game of the week. I don't think there's going to be tons of offense just because of the way Atlanta plays ball, and I think that's a really good under game. I realize I don't really like a lot of overs. I think that's a game that will probably go under, though. I think 40 is a lot for a team. Like, one team got, a defensive touchdown. The Bears were playing very poor NFL offense. So I think, yeah, that's what it's going to be. Chargers cover as a dog. Green Bay and Atlanta go under, just because I think the time of possession in that game and the amount of times they're going to run the ball, it's going to be really high. So that's what I'm thinking there. I think I like the, call me crazy. There's a few here. I'm trying to really think right now, because Cincy, it's a question of, will Cincy allow enough points for this over to hit? Like, because if Cincy can put up like 30 or so points, 30 plus points, all Baltimore has to do is keep pace slightly and score 17. Like, can this game get to 30 to 17? Can this game get to, 28-24? Like, can we get into that zone? I think for over and under, 51 is a ton for Kansas City and Jacksonville. If that over or under was in the 40s, like 48.5, I'd probably take it. Just looking at this board. I'd say sneaky Jets Dallas over. I think Breece Hall is going to be able to do some stuff. 30.5 is low, and man, Dallas loves to kill teams. They love killing teams. Actually, it's staring me in the face right now. Vegas and Buffalo. Vegas will be able to do something on offense, and Buffalo wants to put up tons of points. I think it's going to be an up and down game. I think 47, that's 24-23. Can we get 24-23? That's the over. So we've got dog with Tennessee, over under Green Bay going to Atlanta, over Bills Vegas, and then favorite. Who's my favorite? It's going to be Cincy or Dallas, and I'll get back to you on that. Cincy or Dallas for sure. Don't know who I'm going to settle on, but that's where I'm leaning right now, and I will get back to you on that. It'll be posted on the Sunday blog. But yeah, that's the case there. And I just want to say thank you for listening. Thank you for riding. It's always tons of fun doing this. It's been a ton of fun doing this, and I hope to continue to be doing it and cutting out time to do it. It's tons of fun. The best way to support is to read it, share it, like and subscribe on YouTube, share links, put it everywhere. Let people know, have people talking about it. I'm not going to beg for Patreon money yet. If I get big enough, who knows? But as of right now, just share it. Have people reading it. Let's create a little bit of an army of riders. Why not? So yeah, thank you everybody for listening. And talk to you next week. Gonna do a review of my bets to talk about what went right and what went wrong. So that's upcoming. Going to do another preview like this. And then as the baseball season's coming to a close, I will do a bit of a playoff preview. I think in terms of betting, it'll just be money lines, and it's like World Series winner, division matchup winners, that sort of thing. I'll give you a pretty comprehensive breakdown of the matchups once they're out. And here's a spoiler alert, the Braves, probably, more likely than not. But yeah, that's what I've got going on, and I hope everybody has a great day, and let's make some money. Peace.